In the next installment of the how-to series, we're going to talk about how to make a kick-ass Gantt chart in Excel. Before I go into that demo, which I will show you live, what is a Gantt chart? Well, it's a visual project timeline that maps tasks against time. There's horizontal bars, as you can see on the bottom, that represent tasks, and the length represents duration. In this case, each column represents a week. It can be used to highlight milestones and dependencies. It helps project managers and teams see the plan, track progress, and stay aligned. And here's the good news. You don't need fancy software. You can actually build this chart in Excel that automatically updates the chart on the right based on the start and stop dates. And I will show you how. In 1 second, before we just talk about why it's a great tool, it's one of my favorites. First, you can visualize the project. I am a visual person. I don't want to read a 1,000-line item project plan. A Gantt chart is a great way of seeing the tasks, the milestones, and the dependencies, but you can also spot overlaps and bottlenecks easily. Just by looking vertically, you can see where there's overlaps, and it helps you manage the work. It aligns the team because it's in one place and everybody sees who owns what, which by the way is another reason to do it in something like Excel that everybody has access to instead of a software that might require a license, right? That not everybody can look at. You can track the progress at a glance, so it's easy to look at. Communicate it with stakeholders, and it just enables smarter decisions. Let me show you what I mean. All right, so we are now in Excel, and what I'm showing here is just a high-level plan. You can see each row represents a particular activity. I've put the owner, start and stop, status, and some dates. And the cool part about this Gantt chart is when I change the dates, it automatically builds it to the right. So I'm going to show you how to do that. It's relatively simple. Let me go to a clean please first. The first thing I want to point out though is I like using colors in my um, rows here to distinguish the different categories. The other thing I like doing is having drop downs. So I'm just going to show you if I highlight the status over here, what I can do is I can go to data and then data validation, and I'm going to take this from a list. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the source, and I've already created a list here of all the statuses. And then I can just hit enter, which brings me back to my tab. What that does is it allows me to put a drop down of all the things that I have. So I can put this as not started or not started. These maybe are, actually I'll make all the early ones in progress. Over here, I'll make these not started. Maybe let's put the governance at risk. Okay, so the drop down allows you to have standard pieces of data. The other thing I like doing is conditional formatting. So if I go here to home and then conditional formatting, I can say if the top cell equals, and in this case I go back to my list. So if it's not started, I'm going to make it red. Okay, if I do conditional formatting, if it equals, if it is, and I'll click here and I'll select. If it's in progress, let's make it yellow. Actually, no, green. Green is a good thing. And one more conditional formatting, highlight equals. If I'm going to do at risk over here, I'm going to make that yellow. All right, so now I'm using color to distinguish. The nice thing about by doing that in conditional formatting is as soon as this one goes at risk, you can see it changes the color. Okay, just something to get started. Now we're going to do the auto Gantt chart. And I'll explain to you the logic first, and then it does require a little bit of coding, but I just want you to think through the logic here. So we're going to do an if statement with an and statement in it. But think about it. What we're saying is we want, if these dates here are between these dates, we want to show it on the chart, right? So in this case, I'm going to say equals if and. Okay, so I'm going to say if E4, if the start date is less than next week, right? And then I'm going to put a comma, which is my and the stop date is greater than this week. Then I'm going to put a 1 or I'm going to put a 0. Now just think about this logic, right? So what I'm saying is if my start date is earlier than next week, then that has to be this week. And if my stop date is greater than this week, then that means it's later on. So therefore, it should put a 1 in the middle that says, yes, that is a true statement that my start date is less than 112. That's true. My stop date of 119 is greater than 15. That's also true. Now, a couple of things in Excel when I go up here, we're going to want to copy and paste. So putting a $ before cells lets it retain that column or row when you copy and paste. So by putting it before the E and the F, when I copy it to the right, it's not going to bring the formula to the right. It's going to lock in E and F. And I don't want to lock in the 4 and the 4 here because I'm going to copy it down and I want it to be E5, E6, E7, E8, and so on. It's the same thing with the I and the H. I want to put it before the 3 because I want to keep the row 3 here. I want to keep the week in there. Okay, so if I do that, now I should be able to copy and paste, and there's a whole bunch of zeros and ones. Okay, so now I showed you conditional formatting. We're going to do some conditional formatting where we're going to say if it's equal to 1, you can see it's already doing it. I'm going to make, and this is the trick, I'm going to make my fill and my font the same color. So when I do that, look what it does. It fills in the ones, and look, there's still a 1 there, but because my background and my font color are exactly the same, it shows up as a color. Now I'm going to do the same thing if it's 0. I'm going to go to custom format. I'm going to make my color white, my fill white, and when I click OK, look what happens. Now I have my Gantt chart. So again, it's checking that the cells are between the start and stop dates. If it is, put a 1, which means true, and if not, put a 0. And now I've done conditional formatting for the 1s or the 0s. And then the good thing is, look, when I change the date here, because this 130 is now less than 22 and greater than these, it's highlighting these in blue. So that's a little demo. Hopefully this made sense to you. The one point I will make out is if somebody copies and inserts a new row in here, it will not keep the formula. So the way you do that is you want to copy the entire row, then you want to paste it, and then you want to update your text directly as opposed to just adding a new row, and see how it retained the formatting. So that's my auto Gantt build chart. It is kick-ass, it's colorful, and hopefully helpful for you. Thanks for watching.